The sleek diplomatic vessel approached the massive space station hanging in orbit around Saturn. Inside the ship, Ambassador Frank Miller straightened his formal uniform and took a deep breath. After decades of service to his country, this mission would define not just his career but the future of humanity. 2 minutes until docking, Ambassador, said Lieutenant Kyle Bennett, head of security for the human delegation. His hand rested near his concealed sidearm, a habit from years of military service. Miller nodded. Remember, everyone, we represent all of Earth today. First impressions matter. Dr. Samantha Wright adjusted her data tablet, excitement visible in her eyes despite her professional demeanor. As the mission's xenobiologist and cultural specialist, she had spent years studying the limited information about the 7 species that made up the Galactic Council. This is history in the making, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The ship shuddered slightly as docking clamps engaged. Through the viewport, they could see the alien architecture of the station, flowing curves and crystalline structures unlike anything built by human hands. Stay sharp, Bennett told his security team quietly. Friendly faces but alert minds. When the airlock opened, the humans were met by a delegation of beings so varied in form that even Dr. Wright, despite all her research, found herself momentarily speechless. The tallest of the aliens stepped forward, nearly 8 feet tall with a body that seemed to be composed of living crystal, each movement sending rainbow reflections across the walls. This was Counselor Vex Kor of the Vreeland species. Humanity. The translator in the human's earpieces rendered the aliens' musical tones into English. The Galactic Council welcomes the newest sentient species to achieve interplanetary travel. Your achievement of faster-than-light capability has qualified Earth for membership consideration. Miller stepped forward and performed the greeting, gesture they had been taught. The people of Earth are honored by this opportunity. We come seeking friendship and knowledge. The reception chamber they were led to featured a massive window overlooking the rings of Saturn. The view was clearly meant to impress, and it worked. Even Bennett's stern expression softened momentarily at the sight. Your species has developed remarkably quickly, said another council member, a being that seemed to be composed of swirling gas contained within an ornate metallic suit. This was the Althori representative. Many of us watched with interest as you progressed from primitive flight to space exploration in less than a century. You've been watching us? Miller asked carefully. The Council observes all developing worlds, the Althori responded smoothly. It is our responsibility to guide younger species into the galactic community without disrupting their natural development. The following hours were filled with formal introductions to all 7 Council species, each more alien than the last. Dr. Wright recorded everything, occasionally asking questions that revealed her deep knowledge of xenobiology. Your understanding of non-terrestrial life is impressive for a species so newly exposed to the concept, commented a Lunari delegate, a being that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Later, the human delegation was shown to their quarters. The rooms were clearly designed to approximate Earth conditions, though small details revealed alien misconceptions about human needs. The beds are about 2 feet too long, Bennett observed after the council escorts had left. And there's something odd about these rooms. Odd how? Miller asked. No obvious surveillance for one thing, Bennett said. Either they're more trusting than any government I've ever encountered, or their monitoring technology is beyond our ability to detect. Let's assume the latter, Miller replied. Everyone remember protocol. Nothing said in these rooms should be considered private. That night, while others slept, Bennett accessed one of the data terminals they had been granted use of. His security clearance back on Earth had included specialized training in information systems, and he wanted to learn more about the Council's history. What he found disturbed him. References to managed species integration and resource allocation protocols appeared in historical documents about other worlds that had joined the Council. Translation errors, perhaps, but the pattern troubled him. The next day, the human delegation was invited to observe a council session dealing with routine matters. Dr. Wright found herself seated next to a junior representative of a species called the Neridians, insectoid beings whose world had apparently joined the Council 3 centuries earlier. Your people must be excited to join the Council family, the Neridian said, mandibles clicking. We are, Wright replied, though we have much to learn. Learn quickly, the Neridian said, voice dropping, and question everything. Before Wright could ask what this meant, the Neridian moved away. That evening, during what was described as a cultural exchange, Wright noticed several council members speaking in a corner. Her translator picked up fragments: Earth's mineral wealth, population management, gradual integration. She moved closer, pretending to examine an alien artwork. The humans are more suspicious than predicted, a Vreelan official was saying. But like all younger species, they are eager for advancement. The standard approach will work. The standard approach appeared again in a document Wright accessed later. It outlined a process by which new worlds were slowly stripped of resources while their populations were gradually reduced to sustainable management levels. When she showed her findings to Miller and Bennett, the ambassador's face grew grim. If this is accurate, dozens of worlds have been essentially conquered without ever realizing it was happening, he said. We need to get this information back to Earth immediately. Their departure the next day was delayed by technical issues with their ship. Bennett found evidence of deliberate sabotage but couldn't prove Council involvement. We need to play along, Miller told them. Act like we suspect nothing. But as their ship finally left the station and accelerated toward the jump point near Jupiter, systems began failing catastrophically. We've been sabotaged, the pilot reported. Engine containment is failing. Miller made a quick decision. Get to the escape pods. Wright, Bennett, make sure the data gets back to Earth. The explosion was visible from as far away as Europa. Council media reported it as a tragic accident, evidence of why younger species needed Council guidance to use advanced technology safely. But one escape pod, damaged but functional, limped its way to the Mars colony with 3 survivors and a warning Earth would never forget. As they were treated for their injuries, Miller looked at Wright and Bennett from his hospital bed. They thought they were eliminating a threat, he said quietly. Instead, they've just created one. The first shots in humanity's war for survival had been fired, not by humans, but by the Council that underestimated them. It would prove to be their biggest mistake in 12,000 years of unchallenged dominance. 2 years passed since the attack on the human diplomatic ship. Earth had changed in ways no one could have imagined before first contact. The truth about the Galactic Council's intentions spread quickly after Miller, Wright, and Bennett returned. With their evidence, General Lisa Reeves stood at the window of her underground office looking at the massive construction bay where Earth's first true warships were taking shape. As commander of the newly formed Earth Defense Force, she carried the weight of humanity's survival on her shoulders. Status report, she said to the room behind her. Colonel Grace Martinez, her second in command, pulled up holographic displays showing facilities around the world. Pacific Shipyard is at 87% completion on the first 5 vessels. Gobi Desert Facility has finished the prototype Phantom Drive integration on the Defiance. Reeves nodded. And the silent protocol? Still holding, Martinez confirmed. Council representatives believe their communication outages are due to technical limitations on our end. Their requests for assistance with our communication grid have been politely declined. The silent protocol was Reeves's first official order upon taking command, a complete communications blackout with all Council representatives while maintaining a facade of cooperation. To the Council, humans appeared to be struggling with advanced technology. In reality, they were buying time. In a laboratory 3 levels below, Dr. Peter Ochoa worked with his team to reverse engineer alien technology from the samples acquired during the diplomatic mission. He had not slept more than 4 hours a night since the program began. The power coupling is still overheating, he told his assistant. We need to solve this before full-scale production begins. A voice came from the doorway. Maybe you're still thinking like a human engineer. Dr. Amy Daniels walked in, her unruly hair and casual clothes standing in stark contrast to the military precision around her. Before contact, her theories on quantum mechanics had been considered too radical by mainstream science. Now, her unorthodox thinking was exactly what Earth needed. The council species all evolved from similar environmental conditions, she continued. They all approach technology along the same paths, but humans evolved differently. Ochoa raised an eyebrow. You have an idea? Daniel smiled. What if we're not trying to copy their drive system but build something they've never imagined? Something that works on principles they never explored because of their different evolutionary path? While the scientists worked, Captain Natalie Clark ran training simulations with her pilots. 2 years ago, she had been flying commercial shuttles between Earth and the Moon. Now she commanded the most elite fighter squadron in human history. Again, she ordered as the simulation ended. Tighten up on the approach vector. The Vreeland ships have blind spots in their sensor arrays. Hit them, there, or you won't get close enough for weapons lock. Her pilots, exhausted but determined, reset their simulators without complaint. They had all seen the council reports of what happened to worlds that resisted integration. None of them wanted Earth to become another footnote in council history. In Moy, his office at Earth Defense Headquarters, Ambassador Miller reviewed intelligence reports from council space. His left arm was now a prosthetic, a constant reminder of the explosion that nearly killed him. Beside him sat Lieutenant, now Major, Bennett, whose security background had made him invaluable to intelligence operations. The council is getting impatient, Bennett said. Their representatives have requested establishment of administrative outposts in 3 major cities. Miller's expression darkened. That's always their first move. According to the Neridian files you recovered, those outposts become military strongholds within 6 months. We've stalled as long as we can, Bennett replied. Sooner or later, they'll realize we're not just technologically inept, Miller nodded. General Reeves believes we need another 4 months before we're ready. Can we hold them off that long? If we're lucky, Bennett said. But my instincts say we're running out of time. Those instincts proved correct 3 weeks later when a council cruiser accidentally destroyed an Earth research vessel near Neptune. The message was clear: cooperate or face escalation. In the war room beneath the Rocky Mountains, Earth's military and political leaders gathered for the decision they had prepared for but hoped to delay. The Defiance is ready, General Reeves reported. The Phantom drive works better than we dared hope. 5 more ships have been fitted with the technology, with another 20 nearing completion. President Diane Foster looked around the table. Dr. Wright, your assessment of council response? Dr. Wright, now serving as head of xenological intelligence, straightened in her chair. The council has never faced a species that fought back at this stage of conquest. Their protocols have no contingency for it. According to historical records, most species are subdued through cultural integration before they realize what's happening. And the ones that do realize? Asked the president. They're made examples of, Wright said quietly. But always through overwhelming force. The council relies on their technological superiority, which may not be as overwhelming as they believe. Dr. Daniels cut in. The Phantom drive doesn't just propel our ships, it makes them functionally invisible to council detection systems. They won't see us coming. President Foster was silent for a long moment. The weight of the decision before her was unprecedented in human history. We can't wait any longer, she finally said. If we delay until they launch a full invasion, we lose our one advantage: surprise. She turned to General Reeves. How soon can we launch the counterstrike? 72 hours, Reeves replied. We need to position our assets without detection. Make it happen, the president ordered. Humanity doesn't have the luxury of hesitation. 3 days later, Admiral John Perkins stood on the bridge of the EDF Defiance, Earth's first true warship. Around him, officers monitored systems that merged human ingenuity with adapted alien technology. Phantom drive engaging in 30 seconds, his executive officer reported. Perkins opened the ship-wide communication channel. All personnel, this is the Admiral. For 2 years we've prepared in silence while the Council believed us to be primitive and fearful. Today we show them how wrong they were. Throughout the ship, men and women who had trained for this moment stood at their stations, determination on their faces. Phantom drive engaged, announced the helm officer. The Defiance and its battle. Group vanished from normal space. undetectable by conventional sensors. Their destination, the massive Council hub station orbiting Saturn, Earth's counterattack had begun. The Council hub station orbiting Saturn was a marvel of alien engineering. Nearly 5 miles long, it served as the administrative center for humanity's integration into the Galactic Council. Over 300 Council officials worked there, none of them expecting any resistance from the primitive humans they were slowly conquering. Admiral Perkins watched the massive station grow larger on the view screen of the Defiance. Thanks to Dr. Daniels's phantom drive, the human fleet was completely invisible to Council sensors. "All ships in position," reported his communications officer. Perkins nodded. "Begin Phase 1. Across the solar system, every Council communication relay simultaneously went dark. On Earth, Council representatives found themselves contained in their compounds by malfunctioning security systems. Aboard the Council station, alarms began to sound. "What's happening?" demanded Sub-Administrator Zalthar of the Vreeland Dominance. As the official overseeing Earth's transition to Council control, he had never faced any real challenge. A junior officer's voice trembled. "We've lost all communication with Earth and our relay stations." Attempting to restore, the officer never finished his sentence. The human fleet dropped out of Phantom Drive directly inside the station's defensive perimeter. Before the Council forces could react, EDF ships had surrounded the station. "This is impossible," Zalthar whispered, staring at the sensor displays. "Their technology is not advanced enough for this maneuver." Admiral Perkins opened a communication channel to the station. His message was brief and to the point. "Attention Council Station. This is Admiral John Perkins of the Earth Defense Force. Your facility is surrounded. Power down your weapon systems immediately, or we will take hostile action." Aboard the Council station, chaos erupted. The security forces had never prepared for this scenario. Some officers wanted to fight, others to surrender. In the confusion, no clear orders were given. Major Ryan Foster led the human boarding party from the Defiance. His team, wearing armor designed specifically to counter Council weapons, breached the main airlock with surprising ease. "Remember, the mission," Foster told his soldiers as they moved through the station's corridors. "Secure the command center and the central database. Minimal casualties if possible." The Council security forces they encountered were disorganized and poorly trained. After decades of unopposed dominance, the Council relied more on their reputation than actual military strength. In the station's residential section, Commander Susan Powell led a smaller strike team with a different objective. According to intelligence from Dr. Wright, the station held cultural representatives from 3 other species, actually hostages, to ensure their home world's continued compliance. Powell found them in luxury quarters that doubled as prison cells. The Neridians, insectoid engineers whose world had been under Council control for centuries, were the first to understand what was happening. "You are fighting back?" asked a Neridian named Tikva, her translator struggling with the concept. "We are," Powell confirmed. "And we're here to offer you a choice. Stay here or join us." None of the captive representatives hesitated. All chose to leave with the humans. Meanwhile, Foster's team reached the command center. The doors were sealed, but the human engineers had studied Council technology thoroughly. "Breaching in 3, 2, 1, announced the team's tech specialist. The doors slid open, revealing a dozen Council officials, including Sub-Administrator Zalthar. "This is a violation of Council law," Zalthar declared, his crystalline form glittering with indignation. "Your species will be severely punished for this act of terrorism." Foster ignored him, directing his team to secure the database terminals. "Download everything," he ordered, especially files related to other controlled worlds. One of his soldiers discovered a restricted section of the database. "Sir, I've found something. Records of species who resisted Council control. Worlds that were made examples of." Foster looked at the screen and felt a chill. The Council had destroyed entire civilizations that refused to submit, then erased them from official history. "Copy it all," he said quietly. "The whole galaxy needs to see this." Aboard the Defiance, Admiral Perkins received word that both primary objectives had been achieved. The command center was secure, and the database was being downloaded. Phase 3, he ordered. Broadcast on all channels. Throughout Council space, communication systems suddenly came alive with an unexpected signal. On thousands of worlds, beings of hundreds of species watched in shock as evidence of Council atrocities appeared on their screens. The carefully maintained illusion of benevolent guidance crumbled in minutes. Back on the station, Zalthar finally understood the full extent of the human operation. "You've doomed yourselves," he told Foster. "The Council will bring its full military might against Earth for this." "That's what you don't understand," Foster replied. "We're not just fighting for Earth. We've already contacted the other worlds you've been managing. This isn't a single rebellion. It's the beginning of a revolution." On the Neridian homeworld, military leaders who had been forced to serve Council interests for generations watched the human broadcast with growing hope. Similar scenes played out across dozens of systems as the truth spread faster than the Council could contain it. In the station's hangar bay, Powell supervised the evacuation of the freed representatives. A Lunari diplomat approached her, his liquid form rippling with emotion. "My people have forgotten how to resist," he said. 3 generations have lived under Council rule. Will you teach us?" Powell nodded. "That's why we're here." The Council hub's captain finally surrendered the station after realizing his forces were outmatched. As human troops secured the remaining areas, they discovered something unexpected, a shipyard containing vessels far more advanced than anything the Council had shared with Earth. "They've been holding back technology," Foster reported to Admiral Perkins. "These ships have capabilities beyond anything they showed us." "Can we use them?" Perkins asked. Foster glanced at Tikva, who had joined his team as an advisor. The Neridian examined the nearest vessel. "With modifications," she said. "My people built parts of these ships under Council direction. We know their weaknesses." On the Defiance's bridge, Admiral Perkins received reports of Council military vessels mobilizing throughout nearby systems. The element of surprise wouldn't last much longer. "Begin Phase 4, he ordered, "and contact Earth. Tell them we've secured the hub and acquired unexpected assets. The Council's response will come sooner than we anticipated." As human and allied forces prepared for the inevitable counterattack, news of Earth's successful resistance continued to spread. On the Council's central world, emergency sessions were called as reports flooded in of uprisings on previously docile worlds. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Galactic Council faced a genuine threat to their power, and it had come from the species they had most underestimated. News of Earth's successful resistance spread through Council space despite frantic attempts to suppress it. On the Council's central world, Hegemony Prime, emergency meetings stretched for days as reports of unrest poured in from dozens of systems. Counselor Zivtra of the Althori Collective pounded the ancient table in frustration. "How is this possible? They are primitives. They achieved space travel barely a century ago." "The humans have been systematically underestimated," replied another Council member, his gelatinous form quivering with stress. "And worse, they have shared our secrets with the managed worlds." On Earth, the mood was cautiously optimistic but realistic. In the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Foster received the latest updates from Admiral Perkins. "We've secured the Saturn hub completely," Perkins reported via quantum link. "The database contained even more than we hoped for, including defense codes for 7 nearby systems." Dr. Wright, who had been analyzing the Council data day and night, stepped forward. "Madam President, we've confirmed that 3 other species have already risen against their Council administrators. The Neridians, the Lunari, and the Vox have all declared independence." "And the Council's response?" asked the President. "They're mobilizing their central fleet," answered General Reeves. "Our best estimate is that we have 10 days before they arrive in Sol system." The President nodded grimly. "Then we have 10 days to prepare. Dr. Ochoa, what's the status on integrating the captured Council technology?" Dr. Ochoa looked exhausted but determined. "We've made significant progress, especially with the help of the Neridian engineers. They've been secretly documenting Council tech for generations while being forced to build it. The most significant development came 3 days later when a small Vreeland scout ship arrived at the Mars defense perimeter under a flag of truce. Its sole occupant was Coral Tech, a Vreeland scientist who had spent decades secretly documenting Council crimes. In a secure meeting room at Mars Colony, Coral Tech met with Miller, Wright, and Bennett. "I have brought you this," said the Vreeland, placing a crystal data core on the table. "Military codes, biological data on all Council species, and locations of their primary shipyards." Bennett eyed the crystal suspiciously. "Why would you betray your own government?" Coral Tech's crystalline form darkened slightly, the Vreeland equivalent of a sad expression. "The Council does not represent the will of all Vreelands. Many of us have opposed the subjugation policies for centuries, but we were powerless to stop them." He turned to look directly at Miller. "Until you showed us it was possible to fight back." The data Coral Tech provided proved invaluable. Dr. Ochoa's team was able to develop countermeasures against the Council's most advanced weapons. Colonel Martinez coordinated the integration of Allied refugees who brought crucial knowledge and technology. "Their ships rely heavily on crystalline power cores," explained a Neridian engineer to a room of human scientists. "And those cores have a resonance frequency that can be disrupted." On the 7th day, long-range sensors detected the Council battle fleet entering the outer solar system. Led by the massive flagship Eternal Dominance, it was the largest military force assembled in generations. 57 capital ships, reported the sensor operator at Earth Defense Command. They're on direct approach to Saturn, probably expecting to retake the hub. Admiral Perkins, now back on Earth, studied the tactical display. "They still don't understand what they're facing. They think this is a minor rebellion to be crushed with overwhelming force." When the Council fleet reached Saturn, they found the hub station apparently abandoned. Grand Admiral Pelveriath of the Vreeland Dominance, commander of the Council forces, ordered immediate reoccupation of the facility. "Sweep the station for human sabotage," he commanded. "Restore communications and prepare to punish their homeworld." But, as Council troops entered the station, they triggered the trap Earth had prepared. Hidden EMP devices, designed specifically to target Council technology, deactivated their weapons and communications. Meanwhile, human ships emerged from Phantom Drive directly among the surprised Council fleet. Captain Natalie Clark led the assault on the Eternal Dominance itself. Her squadron had trained for this exact mission for months, using information from Coral Tech about a previously unknown weakness in Vreeland ship design. "Target the tertiary power relays," she ordered her pilots. 3 precision strikes and their shields will collapse without damaging the main systems. The battle lasted less than an hour. With their communications disrupted and their flagship captured, the Council fleet fell into disarray. Some ships fought on, but many surrendered when they realized the humans could have destroyed them, but were deliberately using non-lethal tactics. Grand Admiral Pelveriath was captured alive, along with most of his command staff. When brought before Admiral Perkins, the Vreeland commander could not conceal his shock. "How?" he demanded. "How could primitives defeat the greatest fleet in the galaxy?" "Because we're not fighting alone," Perkins replied simply. "Your Council has created enemies everywhere, and we've united them." As news of the Council fleet's defeat spread, the rebellion across Council space grew exponentially. On worlds that had been under management for centuries, populations rose against their administrators. Council military forces, spread thin across thousands of systems, could not contain the simultaneous uprisings. On Earth, Colonel Martinez coordinated the integration of more alien refugees, bringing valuable knowledge. Research centers around the world worked day and night to adapt and improve captured technology. "We've decoded their faster-than-light communication network," reported Dr. Daniels to the Joint Human-Alien Command Staff. "We can now broadcast directly to every world in Council space." Ambassador Miller, bearing scars from the assassination attempt that had started this war, recorded a message that would change the course of galactic history. Standing beside representatives of 5 formerly subjugated species, he addressed the beings of thousands of worlds. The council has ruled through deception and fear for 12,000 years, he said. They called it management and guidance, but it was always conquest. Today, we offer an alternative, a true alliance of equals where no species dominates another. On Hegemony Prime, the 7 counselors watched in growing horror as their carefully constructed empire began to crumble. Emergency sessions turned to panic as reports arrived of council forces being overwhelmed on dozens of worlds. "We must use the Omega Protocol," suggested one counselor desperately. "The planet killers. Destroy Earth as an example to the others." But even this desperate measure backfired. Coral Tech had brought knowledge of the Council's darkest secret, weapons of planet-killing capability that had been used before on species that resisted, their destruction falsely attributed to natural disasters. When this information was broadcast, 3 Council member species themselves voted to withdraw from the ancient institution, leaving only the original 4 founder species clinging to power. The path to Hegemony Prime now lay open. Earth and its growing alliance of liberated worlds prepared for the final confrontation that would reshape the galaxy forever. 6 months after Earth's first strike against the Council hub, the combined Free Systems fleet approached Hegemony Prime. Over 200 ships from 37 formerly subjugated species flew alongside Earth vessels. At the center of the formation, the EDF Defiance led the way. General Lisa Reeves stood on the command deck, studying the tactical display of the Council homeworld. After decades of military service, she now commanded the largest Allied force in known galactic history. "Final approach to Hegemony Prime defensive perimeter," announced the navigation officer. "Council defense grid is active and tracking us." Reeves nodded. "Begin transmission of access codes." This was the riskiest part of their plan. The codes provided by representatives of species who had joined the rebellion might no longer work if the Council had updated their systems. Tense minutes passed as the fleet continued its approach toward the planet's orbital defenses. Suddenly, the massive defense platform stopped tracking the Allied ships. "Defense grid is standing down," reported the tactical officer, unable to hide his surprise. "Access codes accepted. We have an open path to the surface." A cheer went up across the command deck, quickly silenced by Reeves's raised hand. "Stay alert. This could still be a trap." On Hegemony Prime, the 7 counselors gathered in their ancient chamber for what might be their final meeting. For 12,000 years, decisions affecting trillions of lives across the galaxy had been made in this room. "The defense grid has been compromised," reported a junior officer, fear evident in his voice. "The rebel fleet is approaching the capital." "Activate the planetary shield," ordered Counselor Zivtra, "and prepare the Omega weapons." But even this desperate command failed. Across the planet, Council officials found their systems unresponsive, or actively working against them. The careful compartmentalization that had protected Council secrets for millennia now worked against them, as each isolated system was compromised by those with inside knowledge. "The shield generators are not responding," the officer reported, "and the Omega launch facilities report critical failures in all systems." For the first time in recorded history, the 7 counselors felt something they had inflicted on countless others: helplessness. As the Allied fleet established orbit around Hegemony Prime, landing craft descended toward the Council capital. General Reeves coordinated the operation from orbit, while Ambassador Miller led the diplomatic contingent to the surface, accompanied by Major Bennett and representatives from the Allied species. The Council's elite guards made a brief stand at the entrance to the government complex, but their resistance collapsed when they realized most of their weapons had been remotely disabled by Neridian and Vreelan engineers who had originally built them. Miller walked with a cane now, his injuries from the assassination attempt never fully healed. As he approached the doors to the Council chamber, he paused. "For thousands of years, these doors have only opened for those who accepted Council rule," he said to Bennett. "Today that changes." The chamber beyond was enormous, with a high domed ceiling covered in images depicting Council achievements throughout history. At the far end, the 7 counselors sat on elevated platforms, still maintaining dignity despite their situation. "You have violated the sovereign heart of galactic civilization," announced Counselor Zivtra, his gaseous form swirling with agitation inside his environment suit. "This illegal action will be remembered as the greatest atrocity in history." Miller stepped forward, supported by his cane. "The greatest atrocities in history were committed by the Council. We have seen your records. We know about the worlds you destroyed when they refused to be managed. We know about the populations you quietly reduced to sustainable levels." Behind Miller stood representatives of dozens of species the Council had subjugated. Many carried evidence of Council crimes against their worlds. "Today," Miller continued, "we are not here for revenge. We are here to end a system that has suppressed freedom and progress for 12,000 years." On view screens across thousands of worlds, beings watched as Miller's words were broadcast through the communication network Dr. Daniels had decoded. For many, it was their first glimpse of the true seat of power that had controlled their destinies for generations. "The Council system is dissolved," Miller declared. "In its place, we propose a galactic alliance where all sentient species have equal voice and equal rights." "You have no authority to dissolve anything," hissed a counselor. "The Council has maintained peace across the galaxy for 12,000 years. "Peace?" asked Coraltech, stepping forward. "Is it peace when entire worlds live in fear? When populations are culled for convenience? When resources are stripped from inhabited planets until they can barely support life?" The debate continued for hours, broadcast live across Council space. As the truth of Council rule was exposed, public opinion rapidly turned against the ancient institution. The final shock came when 3 of the 7 Council species themselves voted to dissolve the Council and join the new alliance. Representatives from their homeworlds arrived and announced that they too had suffered under the control of their own ruling classes, who served Council interests. With their support base crumbling, the remaining councilors finally accepted defeat. The Council, which had ruled for 12,000 years, was officially dissolved. In the weeks that followed, representatives from over 400 worlds gathered on Earth to draft a charter for the new Galactic Alliance. Species that had been enemies under Council rule discovered common ground and shared interests when allowed to interact freely. Dr. Wright found herself coordinating cultural exchanges between worlds that had been isolated from each other for millennia. "The Council didn't just conquer worlds," she explained to a group of Earth officials. "They deliberately kept species separated and suspicious of each other, divide and rule on a galactic scale." On the final day of the Charter Conference, Miller and Bennett stood on the observation deck of Earth's first space elevator, watching ships from dozens of worlds in peaceful orbit. "Did you ever imagine it would end like this?" Bennett asked, looking at the spectacular view of Allied vessels against Earth's blue backdrop. Miller shook his head. "When we escaped that explosion, I only hoped we could save Earth. I never dreamed we'd end up saving half the galaxy. What was our advantage?" Bennett wondered. "The Council had better technology, more resources, thousands of years of experience." Miller watched as a Neridian ship performed a ceremonial flight pattern alongside vessels from 3 other species. "Our advantage was something the Council could never understand," he said quietly. "The absolute refusal to surrender even when victory seemed impossible. They thought it was primitive stubbornness. They never realized it was our greatest strength." As the first Galactic Alliance Council prepared for its inaugural session, with representatives from all member worlds having equal votes, Earth took its place not as conqueror or ruler, but as the catalyst that had transformed the course of galactic history. The Council's age of conquest was over. The Alliance's age of cooperation had begun.